guys, and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to be looking into today, it involves a child murder. I'm just going to put like a warning in straight away. You know, obviously these cases aren't for everyone, especially involving children. They can really affect some people. So yeah, it's about a 10-year-old little girl that was brutally murdered, pretty horrifically. So I'm just telling you right now, don't click on it if it's not for you. It is the case of Victoria Martens. I am doing this because it was suggested to me, which was a suggestion by Brittany, so thank you for that. I appreciate any suggestions you guys have, and of course if you have any more, please do let me know. But the circumstances surrounding this case are very weird, like very weird. I don't know, you'll find out as we get into it, if you want to watch it, I guess. Victoria Martens was born on the 23rd of August in 2006 to her mum, Michelle. I am not sure who her father was. I don't think it says it anywhere because I can't find it. She was born in Albuquerque in New Mexico. She also had a half-brother who was called Matthew, and he was born in 2008. She was generally just this, I don't know, fun-loving little girl. She absolutely loved life. She always had a smile on her face. Her favourite colour was purple. She was just a genuinely lovely little girl. She enjoyed gymnastics, swimming, very athletic, and she just had a bright future ahead of her. But sadly, she would never make it to that. She went to Petroglyph Elementary School. At the age of 10, we're into the year of 2016, she was living with her mum, who was 35, at the Arroyo Villas apartment complex. Apologies if I say any of these names wrong, because as you all very well know, I am useless at pronouncing things. Even if it's places in England, which is where I am from, then I still struggle. I just think there's no help for me at this point. Arroyo Villas apartment complex. Michelle had just started this new job. Well, I don't know how long she'd been in it actually, but it was a job at Smith's Food and Drug, and she was described as a lovely family woman. She loved her kids. She didn't do drugs or anything like that, and obviously that will come into play. I'm not just mentioning that randomly because, you know, it does have like a factor in this case. But that was actually a condition of getting this job too. She had to have a drug test. She had that in the May, and that came back as clean. So she got the job and she was working away. She also didn't have any criminal records or anything in New Mexico. And like I said, it's important because you'll find out why. It is safe to say though that her parents, this is all coming from Michelle's parents, right? But it is safe to say that they didn't know everything and that there was a lot that they didn't know as well. In July of 2016, Michelle met a man called Fabian Gonzalez, or Fabian, I am not entirely sure which it is. She met him on the dating website POF, which plenty of fish if you don't know it. He was a regular drug user and he had a long criminal record. He had assaulted a girlfriend previously. He had felony child abuse on his record, which, I mean, she has 2 children, so you'd think, I'm not entirely sure if she knew the extent of his criminal history. I don't know, I can't pretend to know that. You would think that hopefully if she did though, she wouldn't have let him in a house with her children. But there you go. He had also been driving whilst intoxicated and had been arrested for that. So like I said, he had a bit of a criminal history. And he actually told her not to tell his mum about her. So straight away, I don't know, he didn't think that they would approve, and he's like, don't tell your mum. So like I said, they didn't know everything about what was going on in her life. Like, nobody really would. It didn't take him long to move in to the apartment with Michelle and her children. It also didn't take him long to bring his friends round who were also drug addicts, who would then do drugs inside her apartment. And they would often do that. It became a habit for them. When Michelle was at work and the children were at school, they would be in there doing what they were doing. Just generally causing trouble in the area. Then, on the 15th of August, Fabian's cousin got out of jail. She was called Jessica Kelly. There we go. She was 31 years old, and she had also a criminal history. I mean, she's literally just got out of jail, I just told you that. And then he invites her to come and move in with them too. And Michelle agreed to it. Now, apparently he charged her $50 rent for her living there, but Michelle wasn't aware of that. But again, there are now 2 people who have drug habits and criminal convictions living in her house with her 2 children. I'll tell you a bit more about Michelle and the possibilities as to why all of this happened a bit later on. So before I get into the events of what happened, I just want to say a little quick note here that what is said next was thought to be true for 2 years, but it actually wasn't, and you'll find out what I mean. But like I said, they believed it for that long until they found sort of evidence to the contrary. Let's go to the 23rd of August in 2016. It was Victoria's 10th birthday. John and Pat, rang, which were her grandparents, so they rang Victoria and, you know, wished her a good birthday, chatted about how her and her friends had celebrated at school that day, and devastatingly, unbeknown to anyone, that would be the last time that they would ever speak to her. The events happened as they happened, and let's begin at kind of the end. The police get a phone call at 4:30 a.m, which was obviously like the next day at that point, and when they arrived, it was about a domestic disturbance, something like that, off some neighbours. A few people had called in, I believe. They get there and they find that Michelle and Fabian is outside, English, first language, you know, and they have like wounds to their face, like abrasions and cuts and deep lacerations, and they're just thinking that this domestic violence or something along those lines has gone on. They've had a fight, that's that. So they are made aware that Jessica is still inside the house, like she has not come out. So they're trying to get her out, and as a response of the police turning up, she instead locks the door, legs it upstairs, and tries to do a runner. I think the apartment was on the 2nd floor, so she gets out on the balcony, she leaps off, she fractures her ankle in the process and doesn't really get anywhere very quickly. Obviously, at that point, you're thinking that that's weird, because why is she trying to run? Like, seriously, why is she legging it? So they end up going inside, and this is when they come across a very disturbing scene. They follow like a cloud of smoke that is coming from the bathroom, and when they go in, they find Victoria's body in the bathtub. I assume it was probably, I mean, it probably never is, never what you expect, because they went to like a disturbance and then they go inside and they find a 10-year-old little girl deceased in the bathtub. Her body had been dismembered, sections of it were covered up with some sort of sheet or something like that, and she had actually been set on fire as well. That's where the smoke was coming from. Can't imagine such a thing on, it's just awful. Of course, all three of the all three of them were taken to the police station to be questioned. Fabian was interrogated for 9 hours, and that entire time he insisted that he did not do anything to Victoria. Jessica refused to be interviewed without her lawyer present, but Michelle began singing like a bird, but singing the wrong tune, as I've already said. Bear in mind that these, at the time, they were believed to be true, but then they were later proved to be false. So Michelle goes on to say that Victoria had been injected with a drug to calm her down whilst Jessica and Fabian did horrific things to her. They then went on to murder her and obviously dismember her body and then set her on fire eventually. She also went on to say that she would often solicit men to come to her daughter for you know what, and then she would watch. It's very depraved things that she was saying. People were very angry, the public were very furious at all this that she was saying, and it honestly, it's vile what was coming out of her mouth, and the fact that they actually thought it was true, just, oh, it's so awful. And everyone believed her, including detectives, because she was just admitting to everything. They just figured that it was the truth, but it actually wasn't. They were all like indicted, arrested, whatnot. And then the cops are trying to look into the case, and they're trying to sort of build up evidence and gather anything to build that case. And this is when they're coming across things that didn't match Michelle's story. So it was very odd. They did an autopsy on Victoria, and they figured that her death was due to manual strangulation. It was initially believed that Victoria may have been sexually assaulted. However, after re-examining the initial autopsy, so on the initial autopsy it said that she'd been sexually assaulted, but then that was re-examined by all these different experts, and they came back to say that in January of 2019 that they did not believe that she had actually been sexually assaulted. They didn't find Fabian's DNA on her anywhere, but they did find a man's DNA. And this man in the case is referred to as John Doe because we don't know who he is. There was a fourth person sort of involved surrounding this case, and we have no idea who he is. His DNA was actually found on Victoria's back, and that it likely came from skin cells, saliva, sweat, something like that, but it meant that they couldn't compare those samples to the sort of DNA database because of where the DNA came from. And so that would mean that in order to find out who this John Doe was, if nobody actually ever IDs him, that they would have to take swabs from everyone who they think this person could be, and then that's how they'd have to match it. You know, they can't just put it in a database and come back with a match. It won't work like that for this case. So if they're trying to rule people out, then that's what they got to do. They got to swab them and then match the DNA, and if it doesn't match, you know, they're no longer a suspect kind of thing. So as you can imagine, that is going to be a very lengthy process in trying to find who this John Doe was. But now let's get to 29th of January in 2018, which was nearly 2 years after Victoria's murder. A district attorney gave a press conference which basically turned the entire case, flipped it upside down, because like I said, everyone believed that what Michelle said was the truth, that, you know, it was just literally as black and white as she had said it. But then he's saying that after looking into this case for all this time, looking into the DNA evidence, doing the interviews, speaking to witnesses, that is not what the evidence and everything they had collected was saying. It was telling a different story. What they were actually thinking was that Victoria was killed around 7 to 8:45 p.m, right? And Michelle and Fabian were not. I'm sorry if I keep saying his name different. I don't really know which one it is. I'm just gonna keep saying Fabian, maybe. But anyway, getting back to the story, I'm getting a bit sidetracked. They were actually recorded as being at a house in South Valley. Therefore, they were not at the apartment, Michelle's apartment, when Victoria was murdered. Therefore, they could not have killed her. But Michelle was telling the story of she literally sat there and watched them do all this stuff to her daughter and kill her daughter and set her on fire. And now they weren't even there. So this is what they really think happened to her. At 11:40 a.m, the pair go to someone's house to purchase stuff. Victoria was at school. And then this person actually told them that Jessica Kelly should not be in Michelle's apartment because she was acting really weird. And we're assuming at that point that obviously she was probably very heavily under the influence of drugs. 2:30 p.m. comes around and the pair go back to the apartment but then go back out again. 6 minutes later, Michelle texts her mum asking if Victoria can pick her up from the bus stop after school. 1 minute later, Michelle's mum calls back, but the call isn't answered. And then Fabian convinces Michelle to ask Jessica to pick her up because, you know, she's there, she's available, why not? Michelle was a bit hesitant about that, of course, and then Fabian just is like, it's fine, she's okay with her, there'll be no issues. And so she reluctantly agrees to it. I don't know. At 2:39 p.m, Michelle texts her mum saying that she'd sorted out that everything was fine. Well, that she'd figured it out. They then go to somebody else's home. At 3:37, she texts Jessica asking her to pick up Victoria from the bus stop. And then at 4:08, texts her again but does not get a response. By 4:35, Victoria is at the bus stop, and by about 1:45, she's on her way home. Now, I don't know whether she was picked up by Jessica or whether she ended up walking home or something like that. I have no idea. But Jessica ends up having this phone call conversation with her sister where she tells her that she's tweaking and hallucinating. By 6:15, Victoria and Fabian are back at the apartment. And then by 6:30, Michelle and Fabian go out again. Then they come back again. There's a lot of going on out and back and forth in this case. At 7:05, a neighbour actually came forward to say that they saw Victoria alive at that time. Between 7:38 and 7:59 p.m, Michelle and Fabian are at South Valley, like I said. And then at 8:47, they actually get back. At 8:48 p.m, Victoria's lifeless body is seen outside of the apartment, and she's actually being carried by Jessica down the stairs, wrapped in a blanket. She then goes back upstairs with Victoria's body when she sees that Michelle and Fabian have gotten back. And the pair then walk upstairs and enter the apartment not long after. It's believed that this is where Jessica actually tells Fabian that Victoria is dead and that Michelle was not included in that conversation, so it was just between them two. They talk about how they're gonna sort of try and hide it, like clean it up, hide the murder, bury the body, you know, get rid of her. Fabian then goes ahead and distracts Michelle, tells her to make some tea, and then he puts her to bed. It's thought that this is when they made their assault on Victoria's body, when they did all of the things that they did to her. I'm not going to get into the details of them, not for a 10-year-old little girl, but if you want to read them up, you know, they're out there. Then it's thought that Fabian went and got in bed with Michelle, and then sometime after, Jessica comes in and attacks them both with an iron, which is how they both ended up outside with the like marks all over the face and the injuries to their face. I don't get it. But well, it's drugs, I guess. She was very, very high at the time. And then obviously that is when the police arrived and all of everything else went down. It's believed that when Michelle and Fabian left the apartment is when Jessica took all the like smoke alarm batteries out or whatever, or took them down, and then set fire to Victoria's body. So we're probably not been on fire that long when the police got there. It's kind of insane to think that Michelle had literally admitted to being there and seeing it all and basically incriminating herself when that's not even how it played out. She, by the sounds of it, if that is what happened, which is what is believed to have happened, she wasn't even aware of anything to do with Victoria that entire time. And you may be thinking, well, why? Why did she admit it then? Why did she say all this stuff when she literally didn't even know? And people have looked into it and looked into Michelle's personality. They think that she is a very vulnerable person. People who knew her described her as a people pleaser and that she would, you know, try and do anything to basically make other people happy and do whatever they wanted, which can explain why she let 2 drug abusers into her home with her young children. Oh, bearing in mind, the son, Victoria's brother, actually was not there at the time, thank goodness, because who knows what would have happened, whether the same would have happened to him. He would have been scarred for life if it hadn't. Either way, he was actually out at his biological father's at the time, thank goodness, so he didn't bear witness to any of these atrocities or anything like that, and he was safe away from it all. One of Michelle's lawyers also did highlight that she had a lower than normal IQ, and that all of that was probably why she incriminated herself, and she probably didn't even realize that she was incriminating herself, to be honest. Absolutely mental, this case, like how it all went down and what actually happened. And obviously everyone was getting charges, but with this new information in light and how they thought it actually went down instead of how they initially thought it did, charges were dropped, like murder charges were dropped and things like that, because they didn't think that Fabian and Michelle actually killed Victoria, but they were doing things that led to her death, like stuff like that. So Michelle was basically getting charged with like child abuse, recklessly endangering a child that caused their death kind of thing. In June of 2018, she pled guilty to that, and she actually is facing 18 years in prison. Her sentencing has not been set yet, you know, we have no idea when that will be. Fabian Gonzalez, 37, was also charged with child abuse resulting in the child's death, but he also got done for tampering with evidence because, again, he was trying to clean it up and hide it all. His trial is actually scheduled for July this year. I mean, all of this has been delayed because of COVID and things like that. You know, a lot of trials and whatnot got delayed as a result of that, so that is why some of these haven't actually occurred yet. Jessica and Michelle actually agreed to plea deals. Now, I don't believe they actually wanted to do a plea deal with Jessica because she was the main culprit in all of this. Well, one of the main culprits in all of this. But they were hoping that if they did a plea deal with her, that she would sort of testify against like the others, and also that they might find out who this 4th John Doe was, which is actually who they believed is the one that killed Victoria. Now, unlike the other 2, Fabian did not accept a plea deal, and he will eventually go to trial. And as of the 20th of April 2022, so this year, not that long ago, not even, well, about a month ago now, Jessica Kelly, who was 37 at the time, has actually been sentenced to 44 years in prison with regards to her role in everything that happened. And before she was actually offered the plea deal, she actually told a judge that the night Victoria was killed, a man came to the door asking for Favo, which was apparently Fabian's sort of nickname. She then told him, you know, that he wasn't there and that it was just her and Victoria. This is when he came into the apartment and killed Victoria as revenge for some sort of drug-related, gang-related thing with Fabian. So that is her story on this John Doe. Whether she's claiming she didn't know who he was or whatever, I don't know. But I don't know, will we ever find him? Who knows? I mean, the police are still looking into it. We're really hopeful that we will, because we want all of the people involved in this case caught and serving the time that they should do for this 10-year-old little girl's brutal murder over what? Nothing. It's just frustrating. So we really need to catch this guy as well. They have actually filed a 4th indictment, which is for the John Doe, for Victoria's murder. Again, we just don't know who that is yet. Hopefully we will. But they highly believe that Jessica Kelly knows who this person is. Whether she will ever reveal that information, who knows. But yeah, that is the end of this case. It is heartbreaking what happens to Victoria. Just don't do drugs, okay? Don't ever do drugs. It's just awful. Poor 10-year-old little girl. And obviously, it's just such a weird case, like everything that happened. But yeah, I'd like to know your thoughts on it. If you guys have enjoyed this video, give me a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for similar content. Anyway, that's all I have today on the case of Victoria Martens. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye.